This is the China-Hollywood Greenlight podcast, episode number 2.
And rolling sound. Quiet. Here we go. Ready.
Speed.
Speeding.
120, take 7. And action.
This is Karen McCann, the host of the China-Hollywood Greenlight podcast, a podcast about creating and distributing content for both Hollywood and China. Before I introduce today's guest, I'd like to start out with a motivational quote to encourage our listeners to continue on their path to achieve their own green light. And today's quote is from Albert Einstein, and he said, "You never fail until you stop trying." Now to the main segment. Our guest today is Larry Namer, an entertainment industry veteran with over 45 years professional experience in cable television, live events, and new media. Mr. Namer is the co-founder of E! Entertainment Television. He is also the founding partner of Matan Development Group, a venture created to develop entertainment and media specifically for the Chinese marketplace. Matan is adapting several formats of popular Western TV shows for localized Chinese versions, as well as developing an original sitcom. Recently, it was announced that Mr. Namer would executive produce the new TV series, The Bruce Lee Project, which is an original competition format based on the iconic martial artist Bruce Lee. So welcome, Mr. Namer, and thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
I've given the audience a little overview about you, but why don't you tell them a little bit about more about yourself and your business?
Sure. I had sold a while back and started doing a lot of stuff overseas, and just kind of decided that if you want to remain an independent, it probably was advisable to start looking for new markets and where you could be competitive with the big guys. And I discovered China before most. I've been in there for almost 9 years now. And, we're a kind of a broad-based media company there. We do television, we do film, we do internet content, we do concerts, live events, and all sorts of things. And, as far as Western companies go, we've probably been among the most successful there so far.
Oh, well, congratulations. Great. Well, I'd like to ask you a few questions. The first one is, tell the audience 2 or 3 main tasks. I know no day is typical in this industry, but can you kind of give the audience an idea of your day? What are 2 or 3 main tasks you do on a typical day?
Well, we have multiple shows in production. So, for me, at my level, I'm overseeing, 5 or 6 or 7 different projects at the same time. So it's really a lot of what I do is just kind of weigh in on critical decisions. So if we're casting for something, we're down to final casting, I'll jump in on that. If we're, looking at figuring out what a distribution platform would be the perfect one for a certain kind of show, I get involved in that kind of decision making. If we're looking at venturing into a new area for us, again, so a lot of my stuff is more business development these days.
Okay. And is that mostly are you most of the time you're in the U.S.?
No, I used to be 2/3 China, 1/3 U.S. Now I'm 2/3 U.S., 1/3 China, because what we're doing in the Bruce Lee show is a perfect example. Is we're creating formats in the East and developing them and refining them, and then bringing those to other countries. So the Bruce Lee Project we developed while in China, and we've now sold that format in 8 other countries.
Wow, and 8's a lucky number, so that's great. Now, how did you find your business partners, and how do you suggest the listeners find their own Chinese business partners?
Well, you have to. Americans are a little bit naive when it comes to that, and they think that they can just sit in Hollywood and do business successfully in China, and it doesn't work that way. The one thing that we found, if you want to do business in China, you got to make a commitment to doing business in China, and you have to have boots on the ground, and you have to have people there, and you got to really get to very first-hand knowledge of the market, and not jump into just picking a partner because they sounded good in a press release or something like that, and really spending a lot of time researching it. It's the most important decision you'll make there.
And do you need to speak Chinese?
No, I mean, my Chinese is mediocre, when it's best. You need to have partners that do. Well, most of the people in our company, excuse me, are all they're all Chinese nationals.
Okay.
So typically educated, excuse me, educated in the West and then returned to China. So they're bilingual, bicultural.
Okay, great. Well, tell me about an obstacle you encountered in the past. How did you overcome it, and what did you learn?
Well, one of the biggest things, that, I think most people don't learn unless you're there is just the difference in Chinese business culture. Even among our own staff, I would, be ready to go back to LA and say to people, so you got to do this, 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 and this. Do you understand what I mean? And they'd shake their head, yes. And I assume that means yes. That really means I really don't understand what you're talking about, but I'm not going to say that. So it's really, and that's a cultural thing. Chinese don't like to admit that they don't understand something, so they just kind of shake their head, and we take the shake of the head as a yes, and that's not what it means in China. So, really learning those nuances and stuff has been probably the most difficult and probably the best thing that we've ever done.
So when someone shakes their head and says yes, you need to.
Well, we take it as yes, but when they shake their head, it means I really don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so you're very aware of how to handle that situation since you've been through it so many times.
Yes.
Okay. This is like a pretend question. If you could magically solve 2 pain points, what would they be?
One is just the difference in cultural things. One of the things we find in China, while there are cultural differences, there are also certain things that shouldn't just be accepted as cultural differences. For example, when we would do a TV show here in the U.S., there would never be an excuse for an editor being off, a frame even. In China,
an editor what in the frame?
And be off one frame. It would be like very minor, a very minor glitch would not be acceptable here. And then in China, we would, I would look at something and say that edit is off, and they'd say, oh yeah, but it's only off 2 frames. And I go, but it can't be off that. And they go, well, this is China. I think the biggest thing that drives me nuts is that this is China kind of stuff. Like, don't worry about it. It doesn't have to be good. That's changing. But that's probably the main one that bugs me.
Is there a second pain point you'd like to solve?
No. I think that's it. It all relates to that. It's like, well, when you say something and they go, well, you don't understand China. Yes, in many ways they're right. I don't understand China, but I do understand business the way it's done around the world.
Yes.
And just because it's done a certain way in China doesn't mean that's the way the rest of the world's going to accept it.
So when you are in those circumstances, and is there a little pushback? You can say, well, yeah, I don't understand. Maybe I don't understand China completely, but I know how business is done worldwide.
Yes, and that's, you got to kind of learn when to push back and when to just roll your eyes and move on.
Yeah, okay. Now my next question is about, you mentioned the Bruce Lee project. What are some of the future projects, what are the future projects that you're looking for? For example, film or TV, the genre, the budget range, story elements, and what do you think the Chinese studios are looking for?
Well, Chinese studios are looking for big hits. That's a simple answer. We are not going to be players in, the big, the big Transformer kind of movies or anything like that. That's not where we shine. So we tend to stay. We love doing internet content. We love doing things for brands that really want to integrate a brand message into a story that's told over episodes of a TV show, not as a 30-second commercial. So we love developing those because you get immediate feedback. You know whether you've been successful. In China, a successful show can move the acceptance needle for a brand several points, which here in the U.S. you can't do that anymore. And so we look for films that we think transcend both China and the U.S. So we're doing 3 films now that are in some form of pre-production. We've got several TV shows. We're looking at some music opportunities. So that's kind of it.
The feature films, are those all one particular genre?
No, the feature films are across the board. I mean, the biggest one we're doing is something called Empress, which is about the first woman ruler of China. It's been done in China's TV shows many, many times. And, the Chinese, she's kind of the George Washington of China. So everybody there knows her, but nobody outside of China will know who it is.
Right.
In China, she's been dealt with as this famous historical figure. We're looking at doing this movie a little bit differently, where we're taking her and looking more at her as a woman who's really struggling to make it in a male-dominated society and all the things that she went through because she was a woman as opposed to the traditional male emperor. So that's being written by Ron Bass, who won the Academy Award for Rain Man. And the movie is going to be done all ethnically Chinese actors, but the movie will be done in English.
Oh, in English.
Yeah, so because again, we've managed to give it a universal theme: women struggle to make it in a male-dominated society. And if we can, make a good movie, people actually learn a little bit about Chinese history and Chinese culture. Where if we did the movie in Mandarin, then subtitle it, maybe 1% of people around the world will go see it.
Well, in the past, a lot of your content has been in Chinese. So is this a new departure where you're going to do more stuff in English?
That's a departure, and it's actually something that was suggested to us by some folks in the Chinese government. And at first we kind of raised our eyes and said, really? But then when we thought about it, they were right. They said if people, if you subtitle it, who's going to go see it?
Right.
If you make English, people might actually learn a lot. She's not a controversial figure in a political sense. She's controversial in, many other ways. And, it's quite a while back in history. Not a sensitive subject, and that's a little bit different. We look for we like low budget because it's a business model that we can work in. The other new thing that we've done is we've actually started a film fund which is outside of China, which we're doing tax credit lending and pre-sales lending for independent films that we think have a chance of playing in China, even if it's just on digital platforms. So we're now in the film finance business a little bit, and that's a new thing.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Now, I just want to clarify one thing. You said the films, your ideal film is low budget. Can you give me an idea of what the numbers are, budget range-wise?
Yeah. So if you take a film like Empress, you're looking in the 40 million range. That's not low budget.
Yeah.
But in general, we look for things that are, kind of in the $5 to $10 million range. So we're not looking low budget. We're not micro budgets, but we're below 10.
And you have Chinese partners on this Chinese film fund, on this film fund?
Yes,
okay.
We do.
Great. Well, congratulations on that. That's really great news. I look forward to reading more about that. Now, I'd like to ask a question because some of the audience members some are established, some are starting out. So the guests here can give them career advice. If you could do your career over again, what, if anything, would you do differently?
What would I do differently? I'm not sure there's really any, my career has been kind of varied and stored. I kind of reinvent myself every 7 years because I get bored with whatever I'm doing. I started out, as a cable installer, and in Manhattan, and then I started building cable systems out in California, and then and then I did a lot of stuff in Russia. I've been reasonably successful at everything I've done, but I keep just every 7 years could just come up with some grand new idea. China's a little different. China is so big that I'll stick with what I'm doing for a while. Probably, I would have done investments a little bit differently, and I probably should have invested more in cable systems, which I didn't. But like I said, there's not a lot of complaints.
Okay, yeah. Well, you've had a stellar career, so congratulations to you again. Now, you sort of already alluded to this. My next question is, what are you trying to accomplish this quarter? You mentioned the Film Fund. That's new. You're now shooting in English. That's new. Anything else? Any surprises ahead that you can give us a peek on?
Yeah, I'm now doing, I'm in later stage development that we actually shot a little proof of concept stuff. A big show, kind of a news magazine about the world of fashion for the Chinese market. So we're shooting it in Mandarin, but we are going around to the film weeks around the world. We just covered New York Film, the New York Film Week, and not film, I'm sorry, Fashion Week. And so we're really looking at the fashion world, kind of fashion as pop culture, as opposed to, high fashion. So it's more street fashion, the music, the models, the people, the stories around the fashion world as opposed to the fashion itself.
Oh, wow. Now that's great content. I look forward to seeing that. Now tell me, what skills or talents are essential to being effective in your job?
Number one, you have to have an incredibly thick skin because you're going to be wrong more than you're right. And most of the time, people are not afraid to tell you that. But, that's okay. It's persistence, knowing when you're right and just not letting go because people tell you can't do it. If you look at E, when Alan and I started E, when we told people about the idea, people looked at us and said, listen, you're not Rupert Murdoch. You can't start a TV network. And we just kept looking at it and going, well, why not? And people say, when did you know it was going to be successful? And, our answer was from the first day we thought about it. It was such an obvious, it wasn't some great scientific experiment. It was obvious to us that was missing in the landscape of media. And we knew it was going to be successful. We just had to get it going. But it took 3.5 years before somebody would give us the first dollar to get it going. So.
Wow. Now, this is a kind of a trick question. What question did I not ask that I should have?
Let's see. What do I do for stress relief would be a good one.
Okay.
I love cooking more than I love making television or movies.
Oh, you need to do a cooking show.
It's funny because I actually did 4 episodes of a cooking show in China on Beijing TV, where they basically, followed me around here cooking. I'm a very good Chinese cook. I could cook a lot of things, but they covered me cooking Chinese. They were fascinated by the fact that I could do it. So,
what kind of cooking do you like?
I do Chinese, all different kinds of Chinese. I cook French. I cook Italian. Over the years, I've learned almost everything.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to the next your upcoming future cooking show. Now, what advice can you give those aspiring to tap into the Chinese market?
Well, I mean, number one is get yourself over there, and make the commitment that you're going to spend 6 months, live there. Don't live in an expat community. Live among the Chinese and make sure you're going to be comfortable doing business in that market, because you're not going to do it sitting in the U.S. You're going to have to spend a lot of time there for all sorts of reasons. And, if you're not going to be comfortable doing it, then, better to find out early on than than later on. So the first thing to do is get yourself over there and begin to live among Chinese communities and begin to learn the culture.
Okay. Now, thank you for that information. You've given us some great tips and great stories. In conclusion, is there any projects you'd like? You mentioned the Empress Project. Any other projects you'd like to plug, or social media handles, or website links?
Well, you could find us at MeitanDevelopmentGroup.com. We now have a little site up for our fashion project called FashionX.us. We have some preliminary information up there, but those are the two main ones.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Namer, for sharing your expertise with us today. You've given us some great information and a peek at some new news. So thank you for that, and thank you for being on the show today.
Okay, thank you.
We'll see you at the premiere.
Okay.
Larry Namer of Meitan Development had some very good points, and I have some really good takeaways for you today. First, the three key points. Mr. Namer was saying you really have to have boots on the ground. You need to make a commitment to doing business in China, and you need people there. You need firsthand knowledge of the market. So that's one. Number two, don't jump into picking a partner just because they sounded good in a press release. So this is key. You must research your partners. Do your due diligence. And the third one was interesting. He mentioned the Chinese don't like to admit they don't understand you. So in China, yes doesn't always mean yes. You need to learn those nuances. Now, the takeaways, there's a lot of opportunity between the lines. Meitan Development, first of all, loves internet content. So writers, producers, listen up. Here's your one of many opportunities. Number two, Meitan is now shooting projects in English. And surprisingly, the Chinese government is the one who suggested they do this. Why? Well, we all know, because you'll reach a bigger audience if you shoot in English. The third takeaway is their ideal budget is between 5 and 10 million. So that's good market intelligence. The big news, number 4, is they started a film fund outside of China so they can do tax credit lending and pre-sales lending for indie films that can play in China, even if it's just on digital platforms. A new project of theirs, which who knows, this could lead to future opportunities, is they're starting a TV show about the world of Chinese fashion. It will highlight the music, the models, and the people. It'll be stories about the fashion world as opposed to the fashion itself. So who knows, there may even be a possible, if you're a writer or producer and maybe you have a story about fashion, maybe there's some kind of angle or some kind of crossover opportunity there. Who knows? This is just my wild guess. And then the last thing, which was interesting, is Larry loves cooking. And here's another crazy idea. Writers, producers out there, maybe you can develop a script that revolves around fashion and cooking. And I'm sure Larry would love it. But anyway, that's my information. So as far as the episodic portion of this podcast, what's going on with my projects, what's my journey like? This week is, I'm recording this during Golden Week. So most people in China are on vacation. However, I'll still be sending emails out to see if I can set up meetings for the AFM. And my goal this week is to track down phone numbers for Chinese studios in Los Angeles who are probably not on vacation. Studios like Wanda, Bona, Alibaba, Ichi. Wish me luck in that search. It's easy to find the Chinese phone numbers, but I prefer to find the LA office number. So wish me luck. Recently, I heard from a Chinese star's assistant regarding my action comedy, The Kung Fu Rock Chick. So I'm still working on the translation. I will definitely hire a translator because my Chinese is decent, but I won't try to translate the script myself. Lastly, I'm looking for more guests for my podcast. I've got several set up. I've got several interviews in the can, but I'm always looking for guests. So spread the word. And if you'd like to join the podcast or would like to recommend a guest, send me an email at podcast@China-Hollywood Greenlight.com. Thank you for listening to my podcast. I've learned a ton just in the 2 episodes, and I hope you have too. So thank you again for listening. To show your support, go to iTunes, subscribe, and leave a rating so other people can find the podcast. The more we work together, the more opportunities will be there for everyone. And I'll see you at the premiere. Bye. 一会儿见。